I was like, okay, I guess like I can go to rehab. Immediately, my brain is like, okay, we're not doing that. I'll figure out a cheaper way. I'm just like, where the hell do you think $25,000 is coming from? And then they're like, well, we talked to your parents. And I was like, you talked to my parents?
Welcome to Recovery.com, where we share authentic stories from influential voices about the joys of life in mental health and addiction recovery, and the journeys that led us here.
We tell our stories because we do not heal in isolation.
I'm Brittany Baynard.
And I'm Tom Farley.
Today, we are joined by the incredibly funny Andrew Barr, a stand-up comedian known for his sharp wit, dry delivery, and hilariously insightful takes on life. A regular on the comedy circuit, Andrew has performed at top festivals, clubs, and on national television, earning a reputation as one of Canada's rising comedy stars. His smart, subtly absurd humor has won over audiences everywhere, making him a must-see act. Whether he's riffing on everyday absurdities or diving into deeper topics with a deadpan charm, Andrew has never missed a beat. Get ready for an unexpected conversation and find out how Andrew got from the airport to the recording studio. Thank you for joining us on Recovery.com today. Our guest is Andrew Barr, comedian and recovery advocate. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Great to be here in Madison.
Yes.
Yeah, from Canada.
Yeah. I love your city so far. Everyone is very nice. I'll say not super pedestrian friendly, the town. I walked here from the airport. And
we're going to get into that. Yeah, no, this is great to have you. I'm honestly, when they said that we're going to throw a comedian at you, I was like triggered from like growing up, and I don't know if this is going to be a therapy moment for both of us. So let's just kind of jump right in. Before you embraced sobriety, what did life look like? Your struggles with addiction?
I started drinking pretty heavily when I was like 18. That's the same time I started doing comedy. So I was just like in a bar every day doing shows. So it was sort of natural to just have a few drinks, every day. It sort of escalated from there, just gradually more and more drinking. Then in my early 20s, I got a little bit more into, MDMA once in a while, a little bit of psychedelics. And then I think around 23, 24 years old, I started doing cocaine. At first, not so much. And then, just gradually more and more.
It's a progressive thing. What are the things happening in those environments that are like causing this like progression? Because nobody starts off like at that far end with MDMA.
Yeah, I think it's just the nature of the disease too, right? They call it a progressive disease. It gets worse over time, and it changes you ever so slowly, which I think is kind of its insidious nature. Like the change happens so slowly that you feel the same day to day, but you are just changing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And it doesn't seem like much. You don't even notice that it's happening. But once that little bit of change keeps happening over the course of years, all of a sudden you look and act like a completely different person, even though you feel like you've been this same guy the whole time.
Yeah. You think these substances are great tools to manage your emotions or life. But what we don't realize is that life is getting more complex, and so the substances have to keep pace.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're good at managing emotions or just straight up murdering them.
Yes,
just numbing them out completely.
Well,
so that you don't have to deal with them at all.
Yeah, you said I started drinking, and then I went into comedy, came to comedy. So did you give any indication growing up? Did the encouragement of oh, you're so funny, or the way you said it was I started drinking, and then hey, I'm a comic.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I did a little bit of improv and stuff like that. So I think I was always kind of class clowny, funny kid for sure. I went to school for comedy. There's a legitimate college program that you can take in Canada.
Toronto, right?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, my parents were very about post-secondary education. This was sort of before most of the world had figured out that most of post-secondary education is a massive scam. So this was in the era where people were like, if you're going to succeed, you must go to college or university. My parents were like, we don't care what you take. You just have to go and take something.
You're like, bet.
And then I was like, okay, there's this comedy course. And they were like,
Wow.
we did not know that existed.
Work this system.
But technically I was within the parameters of the agreement. So they let me go to comedy school, which frankly, I've done more with my diploma than most people who went to post-secondary. So I think, not a bad little program.
You can throw me in on that list right there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You went to school, you've doing all this stuff. Like at this point in your life, let me just take a departure. Like who are you looking at? Who are your models? Who are your comics? Who are your guys? Who are your people?
Well, I definitely grew up. I saw a lot of Chris. My dad showed me like a lot of old SNL and stuff like that.
Oh, my brother, you were the kid I had to share a bedroom with?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was your model.
Certainly, well, one that I enjoyed a lot. I think my style is different. I wish that I was able to be so physical and stuff like he was. That's probably a weak point for me. I've always been more of a words guy, but not specifically as performative as he was really brilliant at being. But I liked Seinfeld a lot growing up. I watched a lot of what my dad watched. My dad got me into a lot of comedy, and he really watched a good variety of stuff, like a lot of SNL, then also like Seinfeld, and also like Three Stooges I watched a lot of growing up. So I like really gag based stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of old
like the class clown.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Stand up is intense like that.
Yeah.
It is a solo sport, even though there's often more than one comic on a show, but your set is your set. And what I've sort of liked about it is that, your success is your success and your failure is your failure. And it's, there's something that I sort of like about that, where when you really pull it off, it's like, yeah, I did that, but certainly at times when it goes badly, that can be isolating as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
Speaking of going badly.
Yes.
When you are going through addiction and you're also working as a comic, what are you able to like function through that? Did those have effects on your sets? Were other people able to notice? Sometimes I feel like when we're fueled up on stuff, we're like, I am killing it.
Yeah.
And then we see it later and we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I loved performing all fucked up. I can't say responsible about it, but I'll say often I would do like 2 or 3 shows in a night. So for the 8 p.m. show, which would usually be like the bigger money show for the day, for that show, I would always have like only 2 or 3 drinks in me, which to me was like the pocket. Like that was when I was feeling really on my shit. So for the earlier in the night, like shows that mattered, I would only have like a few drinks in me kind of thing. But then there was often, there's a club in Toronto called Comedy Barr that has a show at 11:30 p.m. every Friday and Saturday. And I was like the resident closer for that show. So pretty much every Friday and Saturday, I'd be going on stage at around 1 o'clock in the morning. And for that show, my routine was that I would go in the bathroom right before my set, do a line, and then go on stage. I loved doing cocaine and then going on stage at that show. Yeah, I would say my performances at those shows were more hit and miss. And I probably seemed like a lunatic a lot of the time. I guess thankfully, because it's an 11:30 show, a lot of the crowd was also pretty drunk. So maybe people couldn't tell as much. But
that definitely happens.
Yeah.
What was the main driver? Was it the environments you were in, like the comedy environments, or was it the family kind of history? Obviously, it's both.
Yeah, definitely a combination. I think, at the time I didn't understand anything about addiction or what I was doing. I kind of knew that I had a drinking problem, but I didn't really know what that meant. And I think I was numbing a lot of feelings that I had. Just actively avoiding my feelings. And the environment really allows you to do that. Like everyone is always drinking at work and stuff. So it's sort of easy to get away with. I don't know. I think it was like a pretty even 50-50 split of like environment as well as just, a lot of numbing.
Yeah. It also combined with, if that's what everyone's doing, if that's the normative behavior, the fact that you might be the worst
Yeah.
doesn't resonate with you because but this is what
Put
everyone's
yourself
doing.
on this spectrum of people.
But everyone's doing.
comparing yourself.
Everyone's like, you're going too far, and you're like, I'm doing what you're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, totally. It is funny to like we were talking about how it's sort of a progressive thing, and it starts with you just having a few, and then all of a sudden you're having more and more. I remember when I was first drinking a lot, my benchmark was always like, oh, that guy's more fucked up than me, so I must be not so bad.
Mhm.
Things must not be so bad because look at that guy over there. There was always somebody drunker or more high. And then, I kept getting worse and worse. And then at a certain point, it was like, oh no,
Were you that top guy?
I'm the guy. I have ascended the ladder and I am the most fucked up guy in the room.
You had your alpha moment.
Pretty much
It's me.
all the time. Yeah. It's sort of not wrong in that whoever is the biggest disaster of the night is usually what is most talked about. And you can kind of float under the radar, but that's just really not a sort of a healthy way to operate because you still are like poisoning your body every day and, deteriorating yourself and your mental health. And a good reason for doing that isn't, oh, well, at least nobody noticed that I'm killing myself.
Yeah.
Because there's someone else doing it stronger.
Yeah, someone else is killing themselves faster than me. And everyone's talking about him. So I get to kill myself at my slightly slower pace.
Well, that can go on forever. What you just described, this thing, and just kind of feeding off this thing. So what was your turning point? Like what was this is enough?
I was intervened upon.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Intervention.
I got sat down twice and I saw neither of them coming, which to this day annoys me.
The second one surprised you?
Both. So the first one, so I had like a soft intervention and then a hard intervention. The soft one was like just three guys and they were basically like, yo, you got to slow down significantly. Like you're not realizing it, but you're starting to embarrass yourself in public. It's starting to affect your career. There's behavioral things we're noticing that are not you. You got to really rein it in. They didn't say full stop, but rein it in. Anyway, for that intervention, the way they got me, I was living with a guy and earlier in the week, he was like, hey, could you be home at like 7:30 on Tuesday in the evening? I'm having a table delivered and I need some help bringing it upstairs. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, And then the intervention happens and I was like, in hindsight, who the hell has a table delivered at like 7:30 p.m.? And we lived in a fully furnished apartment. There was nowhere to put a table. It didn't make any sense. I was so mad that I didn't see it coming. And then
I hope you're still not looking for that table, right?
No,
there was no table.
There was no table.
Right.
There was no table the whole time.
Just text him, are you still waiting?
And then the second time they told me that I have a friend who like works in film and they said that they needed help one day, also in the evening, like unloading something or other. Yeah.
Do you get asked to help a lot or?
I've worked in moving for a long time as well as like a side gig. So this one was like more of a believable ruse, I suppose.
They knew how to get you.
They were probably like, we can't tell him table again. We're gonna have to mix it up over here.
They had table ready.
Table a second time would be crazy.
Diabolical.
So yeah, they lured me with that, and then I was a little annoyed because I thought I was gonna make $200, and then I didn't.
Put money,
which was for drugs to buy.
Of course.
And then I turned out I was making $0, and that everyone was mad at me, which is a pretty harsh pivot. So yeah, I showed up, and the second intervention was, it's the shit you see on TV. It was like 8-9 people, maybe. Everybody wrote letters. They read them to me. They cried reading their own writing, which I found slightly indulgent, but it was super heavy and emotional, and really, I do not recommend. Interventions suck. I've been on both sides of them. No one's happy to be there. It's so stressful. And now I have like weird PTSD where when I get invited to stuff, something in my brain is like, it's another one. Even though I'm sober and like everything's fine. Somebody invited me to like a hockey game the other day, and in the back of my brain, I was like, oh no, is this another one?
Is this a real hockey
Even though I'm
game?
like, what could it even be about? But some part of me is scared that they're going to sit me down and be like, okay, now that you're sober, good job. Now we talk about all of your other glaring flaws. So I almost don't like being invited to shit anymore. I like to make the plans.
Yeah, no family reunions. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even think of that. So, oh my gosh.
So
yeah,
that first soft intervention, was that like your friends? You're like,
Yeah, that was three
close to
buddies.
them?
Yeah. I was
that.
receptive
Yeah.
to I was like, okay, yeah, you guys are right. I need to like really dial it back.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you guys probably know, moderation for someone who's like a full addict it can work like super temporarily. Like I did cut it back a little bit. And like for a couple months, I wasn't drinking as much, but then, gradually a little bit more and a little bit more. And then within, 7 or 8 months, I was right back where I started, if not worse.
At that point, our minds, are so, forward looking, like, and then somebody proposes this, we want you to live this kind of lifestyle. And we're putting our current selves out 5-10 years and like, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
This person out there now without any substances and liquor, like that looks horrible.
Yeah. I was terrified.
Yeah.
I when I went to rehab, I didn't think like, I basically knew my thought at the time was that cocaine was what had really ruined me. It was like, that was where the worst of my behavior was coming from. And that was what was messing with my brain the most. So I really thought like, okay, I got to get off the coke, but I probably will still be a drinker like my whole life. Like I couldn't imagine no booze.
In treatment, did you learn, was it about substances and how to, wean off of those or give up some of those, or was it a connection or my authentic self? Was it?
Yeah.
Or did that come later?
I think a few things were helpful. One thing they explained to me in rehab, I'm always really bad at parroting sciencey stuff back because I'm not good at that. But basically, I think when you use alcohol and cocaine together frequently over a long period of time, it forms like a neurolink in your brain where anytime you have alcohol, you will also crave cocaine. Yeah. So I sort of accepted that as fact and accepted that like, at the very least, I'm going to have to stop drinking for quite a while in order for like that Neuralink to dissolve, which I think it does after, it might take years. I can't remember. But so I sort of accepted from that, like science said, okay, like booze has to be out at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe it's something I can revisit down the line. And then, learning stuff about how like drugs and alcohol are mind altering substances, which I think is a common thing to hear, that they're mind-altering substances, but I don't think people often think about it literally. Like it's altering your mind, which is alarming. Yeah. You're becoming different from yourself. That's what altering your brain is. And I think for people who use in moderation, or like for them, it's not a problem. It's not a huge deal because, you go out maybe one day a drink, you alter your brain a little bit, it swings back. By the time you go out a week later, it's right back where it started and you're just doing this. But if you're drinking every single day, you're just constantly altering it and altering it and altering it. It's not getting a chance to swing back. And it really made me think that like, oh yeah, over the course of years, I became someone who is not even me. And that's upsetting, And certainly in that time, I let people down in ways that I otherwise would not have. There's people that I'll probably never get back into my life, which is, that's fine. You got to take a couple lumps, not everything works out. But what I've learned to enjoy about sobriety, even though it's, it's hard, you have to feel every single one of your goddamn feelings all the time, 100%, is that at least I am the most authentic version of myself that I know how to be. And I can like trust my intentions and where I'm coming from. And even though I'm not perfect, at least I know that the decisions I'm making, I'm the one making them and not like some tweaked version of my brain that is really being kind of puppeted by substances and trying to destroy myself.
When you said, I got to feel my feelings, I didn't know what those were.
Yeah.
All I knew was laughter and not comedy. that was a coping mechanism, and for everything, every emotion out there.
For sure.
And when it wasn't enough to manage, the emotion I was really feeling, then I had always had drink and things.
Yeah.
How did you like get past the
feelings?
humor to how did you start to develop some of these other emotions? I know you got humor.
Yeah. Something that I think was important that they told me was that like getting sober is the easy part. And then after that, it's about figuring out why were you doing that to yourself? Because, you were like slowly killing yourself and to some degree fine with it. Like I always just sort of accepted that I was going to be like a guy who lived like that until my body went, nope. And that would probably happen, sometime in my 40s or 50s or something like that.
There's one emotion I had a lot, and I think everyone kind of understands this, was fear.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and a lot of it was homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used humor to mask that fear, and I drank to mask that fear. And once I stopped doing those things in recovery, all of a sudden I didn't have as much fear.
Yeah.
Which opened the door to other emotions.
For sure. I think I can relate to fear a lot.
Yeah.
I think what's very comfortable about drinking and using drugs is it's also an excuse for not fulfilling your full potential.
Mm-hmm.
You always sort of because that's a scary thing for a lot of people is, am I going to achieve? Am I going to become something? Am I going to make it? Whatever your version of that is for yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're drinking and using drugs all the time, it's sort of a like, oh, well, if I wasn't doing this, then I could really get some shit done, and you can kind of use it as an excuse. Then once you stop doing it, you're like, oh shit, now I have no reason not to be achieving, which is super scary.
It's really vulnerable to have that and face that.
Let me ask you this, like, what's it like to go out in front of an audience now without those walls? So now I'm sober. I've broken down those walls, and now you've got this crowd.
It's been a couple years. I rarely think about it anymore, which is great. But that was the most stressful thing for me coming out of rehab. I basically went immediately back to performing because I needed the money. So I went right from rehab to being in a bar every day around all of the same people that I used to drink with in all of the same settings, which is like super not advisable.
Yeah,
but
how'd you hard launch yourself into that?
I just fucking wore it on my chest.
Yes.
I told everybody that I was in rehab.
What was the response? Like, how did
people were like, that's probably good.
Yeah, good for you, bud.
People were like so not surprised necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, mostly everybody really super supportive. But I was so terrified of relapsing because also I was, I'm luckier than a lot of people. I was able to borrow the money from my family to go to rehab because it wasn't covered for me under anything. I was just terrified of the shame of like borrowing that money and then immediately drinking right afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was just like, just thinking about it, the feeling in my stomach made me want to die. I just got to tell everybody right away where I was, what's going on, that I no longer drink, so that if anyone sees me with a beer in my hand, they know that's a huge problem.
Yep.
And that's like extra motivation for me not to do it. And like a lot of the bartenders at these comedy venues and stuff are people that I've known for years and they're, legitimate friends of mine. So they weren't about to serve me either. So that was helpful right out of the gate because it was hard just being around it so much so quickly. And the idea of performing sober was super stressful. I don't know if I had ever really done it since high school. Like I always had at least one or two beers in me. And the thing is, as I was, especially for a long time, I was reasonably functional as an addict. Like my career was progressing. I was writing good jokes. Things weren't going badly. I was, respected in my field for my ability. So, basically the whole time that I had been achieving success in comedy, I had also been drinking at the same time, which makes you think, okay, was that the booze? Can I be funny without the booze? Was that sort of, was it a booze muse, you know? Thank God that was not the case. I feel better on stage than I ever have. Some of the funniest writing that I've done, if not the funniest writing, has happened since then. Certainly I was a bit stiff for the first few performances. I felt, it's so weird. I felt crazy being sober in front of everyone. And I thought it was so weird to not be drunk at my job. Like, I was like, I can't believe I'm going to go up there and be sober. Everyone's going to think I'm weird for like not being hammered, which really shows you how that shit will just turn your brain backwards.
Yeah.
It's like most people would find it unreasonable to be very drunk at your job.
I read the article that you had written about going into treatment.
Yeah.
So one, what was the experience like for you finding a place to go to for treatment?
Yeah.
And then also kind of like just recap your experience going in there. I was hysterically laughing reading that article. Like I was in a spot where I needed to be quiet and it wasn't happening. So I had to stop reading it.
Funny.
It was so funny.
Thank you. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. You're good with words is an understatement.
Yeah. I put a lot of work into that piece.
And if you've ever heard this one laugh, like that's why you go into this business.
That's why they told me to be quiet.
Yeah, it's a good cackle.
To create that kind of laugh. Yeah, no. Yeah. So you did what
You're funny.
Good.
Do.
I like somebody with a good cackle. You guys are great.
Yeah.
When you're
That's not it.
When you're in an audience, it's like kindling. It makes other people laugh around you. It's good.
Yeah.
Snorting everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, you're my favorite. We need people like you in
Front row.
audiences all the time.
Okay.
So the experience of finding a rehab was, it was interesting. Like, so the intervention, I was pretty stripped down. They read the letters, I'm very raw. You feel like you've been kind of flayed, like you're missing a few layers of skin and everything's very sensitive. And, I was like, okay, I guess like I can go to rehab. And they were like, okay, great. There's one in Kingston. It's a 2.5-hour drive. We already talked to them. They can take you tonight. You can get in the car right now. And I'm like, okay. And then they're like, it's $25,000. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Who $25,000? Where the hell? You have any idea how much debt I'm already in from doing cocaine all the time? It was an unfathomable.
Without any idea really what treatment is.
Yeah.
You're coming at it with I know you don't know what this is, but here's what we want.
Yeah. How long of a conversation do you have with someone about the treatment you're about to experience before you got that $25K price tag?
They didn't tell me too much about the facility. They dropped the number and I was like aghast. Immediately my brain is like, okay, we're not doing that. I'll figure out a cheaper way. Maybe I'll go stay with my family for a month and start going to meetings and some therapy and figure out a way to have a similar experience without the price tag. So I'm just like, where the hell do you think $25,000 is coming from? And then they're like, well, we talked to your parents. And I was like, you talked to my fucking parents?
Wow.
And that was,
they got mom and dad involved.
Parents have entered the chat. No idea that they knew anything about this. So I had to call them and tell them that I was willing to go to rehab. I felt such shame that, I'm lucky. They've worked hard. We weren't like, a rich family growing up or anything, but they've been wise with their money over my lifetime and they're comfortable. And they were like, we can throw you 25.
And you're like, are we rich?
Yeah.
The used car I wanted last year was a no.
Yeah. They're like, we got it, laying around.
Wow.
But I was just like not having it sort of. So we shopped around. We looked at some other places. We started to find out, different features that places have. This is just my opinion. I think some rehabs are too nice. And that you don't need all that shit and that it's a lot of bells and whistles that they can just charge you for. Shit like the one I think they wanted me to go to had like equestrian therapy.
Equine therapy.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't
that's the thing.
I don't need to groom a horse in the presence of a therapist. There's like volleyball courts and shit.
It's pickable now, but but that's the point is, like go to rehab, but yet, everyone's they're from a different path. and every place is, probably there's some people that, actually get something out of that, but like we don't know.
Totally there is. That's why I just say it's just my opinion. Like everybody does have a different path, and I'm sure those treatment centers, like for some people it works for them. I was almost more like, I don't deserve to fucking play volleyball, or this shit.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about? I'm going to get,
That's that shame talk.
Yeah. I was ashamed, and I was like, we got to find like the cheapest one.
Mm-hmm.
So we found one for 15. I shaved off 10 grand with our little shop around. And I felt that $10,000 difference in there for sure.
So you didn't leave with the t-shirt.
No, it was super bare bones. It was basically like me and guys on parole for the most part. It was kind of sketchy. The food was hit and miss. Lunch ladies were the best, sweetest people in the world. And some days they would really knock it out of the park. But then other days they would be like, sorry, we burnt the soup.
How do you burn soup?
Exactly. And
I can.
It was cream based. I'll give them that's easier to burn. But it was the only thing we had. So just like 30 guys would sit there and eat burnt soup. It was so funny. But I do think that this place maybe doesn't have the funding that some other places have or the price tag. I really think like the most important part of the place that you go is likely the staff.
Yeah.
And the staff there were fantastic. They said when we were in there, they were like, whatever, maybe this isn't the nicest one. Mm-hmm. We have the highest success rate in the like county or whatever, area. Yeah. All the staff were fantastic. And because it was so bare bones, you focused up. And I was like, I'm here to fucking work for 30 days. That's it. This is like boot camp.
Not get mad at Brad for beating you in pickleball.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah. You went to Camp North Star. That's awesome. Talk to me about, like, as you said, like these guys are like, people I wouldn't have hung out with in a million years.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself connecting though?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, we all had, one or two things in common in there, definitely. But yeah, definitely people from all walks of life, but very similar sort of, emotional problems and traumas. And it's funny. I think a lot of people stay in addiction for a long time because you feel so kind of like uniquely broken and like that no one understands, and no one could possibly fix you. You're such a unique,
so special,
broken little creature. And then, you go into rehab and it's 30 guys who look just fucking like you. And you're like, God damn it. And they all have the same story. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. But people feel that way though. And is it because like we don't talk about it enough that it literally just takes one conversation with one person to be like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like same thing.
Yeah, totally. You realize there's a bunch of people that are just like you. And if there are a bunch of people that are just like you, there's probably at this point a formula to fix your dumb little problem you have, not to be diminishing about it, but so I definitely found a lot of brotherhood with the guys in there. I'm still in touch with a couple of them. One guy in particular is doing so well that I'm really proud of. It was cool being around them. It was fun seeing people kind of snap back because we're so lucky to have our miraculous human bodies. You can abuse them for so long, so brutally. And then like a couple weeks and shit really turns around. There was this one guy, he looked so rough when he came in. I think he was pure booze. He was drinking like a 60 of vodka a day. And he was little. I was bewildered. Like, you're like a little impressed, even though it's awful. Cause you're like, how? He looked so bad. And then, I spent like 3 weeks with him. After 3 weeks, I was like, is this guy fucking James Bond? Like,
he's just morphed in
your face just unswells. And it's crazy. You get to see people like become themselves again. That's right awesome. In front of you. And it's actually like really quite special.
Yeah, you go from treating your body like a trap house to the temple that it actually is.
Yeah. And it's not like we were doing anything that good to our bodies in there, eating like Cheetos and burnt soup, and still that was enough.
I'm thriving.
Yeah. Our body's like, thank God Cheetos in this shithole.
We introduced a vegetable.
So desperate. Oh, yeah. Because actually the one that I went to didn't even have much for the way of like exercise equipment either. You could kind of make it
around the house.
I, like a lunatic, there was one plot of land that we were allowed to be on. And I just ran laps whenever they would let me. which was for a short window of time because we weren't allowed out there after dark, and it was winter in Canada, so it's dark at like 4 p.m. And then there was like a little conference room that I would go and like do push-ups and sit-ups and stuff.
This podcast is brought to you by Recovery.com. Recovery.com is a place where anyone can find mental health or addiction treatment options specific to them. You can filter by location, price, insurance coverage, therapy type, mental health condition, levels of care, and so much more. Recovery.com is the place to find mental health or addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere.
Well, all right. So we've talked about the physical fitness. There were no horses. Another pillar of recovery at the spirituality. Was there any that there?
Yeah. So I'm a dude. I'm not specifically religious. Not super spiritual. I think I'm a guy who would like, I don't really see it, but I'd like to be wrong. You know, I think it's funny when atheists seem so like set in their position and like almost like proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wouldn't you like to be wrong though? Wouldn't it be great if there was
Never felt that way.
Right.
something after, you know? And I will say that, so if in rehab, we learned a lot about AA, a lot of program stuff, which is, you know, written by Christians. When you're reading it, you can take it as a bit Jesus-y, even though there are things that in it that specifically say, like, you know, it says that you need a higher power, but that the higher power is yours to define, and that it's really just a belief in something greater than yourself. And I think everyone can sort of find something that they believe in that is greater than themselves to sort of wrap their sobriety around. I saw a lot of guys who were not religious let that get in the way of their progress.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they would really fixate on it and get upset when they felt like things were Jesus-y and stuff like that. And I think one of the most important pieces of advice I got before I went into rehab, my buddy Christoph, still a very close friend, because I didn't want to go. I was basically going because they told me that they wouldn't hang out with me ever again if I didn't go, essentially. I didn't want to go. And he sat me down and he was like, listen, I know that you don't want to go, but you're going. So while you're in there, keep an open mind. Like you're going to be in there. So you might as well drink it all in, keep an open mind to everything, use what you can use. If something doesn't make sense, you know, let it flow kind of by you. And I think keeping that open mind is super valuable because, especially in early sobriety, your brain is still fucked. So whatever you think is a good idea probably isn't anyway.
Haven't been making them
idiot.
recently.
You're still concussed pretty much. So I made sure to keep an open mind about everything and like get into meditating, even though I thought it was kind of weird. And like the spiritual stuff didn't really stick with me, but I was like, okay, I can believe, you know, I understand the perspective of something greater than me. And I saw guys that couldn't get around that religion thing. And I think they let that roadblock be there. And I'm like, is that the addiction trying to keep you from making any progress? You know,
a lot of times we use humor, at least the way I, you know, understand, to connect. Did you lean into that? Like when you first came into treatment, did you see like I have an audience and so did you continue to perform? How did that change?
I think by the end, I was such a scared little boy when I got in there. I thought my life was over. Like, it's funny because you're there to like save it and be better afterwards. But I was like, there's no coming back from this. Like, it's so humiliating. Everyone's going to find out. So I was super discouraged when I went in and kind of like afraid of everybody and very shy in a way that I wasn't used to. So it took a while for the humor to come out because I feel like you need to be sort of comfortable in your surroundings a lot of the time to really let your humor flow. So at first I was like not talking a lot and listening to other people and stuff. But by the end of the month, it's funny, you get in there and you're so scared. And by the end of the month, I was like, I could almost live here. Like you get sort of used to it, the routine, the rhythm. And definitely I was joking around with the guys all the time. They had me leading a lot of the AA meetings that we would do in the house because I was more comfortable with public speaking than most people, coming from a performance background. By the end, I felt like the king of rehab, man. I had we'd all be sitting in the TV room and I would be the one holding the remote.
You had the remote?
I had the remote,
Dang.
man. I was top of the pile.
A lot of times we use comedy to create those barriers. You know, as I said, coping mechanism. I don't want you in here. So, you know, I developed this great humor. In treatment, you break down those walls, but you're a comedian. Like you still did your comedy change from I need to using it to protect to now I'm just going to be funny?
Yeah, I think it definitely changed. Has changed quite a bit, I think.
Yeah.
I would say that my comedy pre-rehab, it was good. I was, earning a semi-functional living. Shows were going well, but I would say that the jokes I was doing weren't super personal. I didn't talk about myself very much. It was all about other stuff. And I think that I didn't want to talk about me too much on stage because I didn't like me very much. And so while I was producing what was good work, I would say that those jokes, well written as they are, could sort of be told by anybody. Whereas since then, I've written, a bunch of material about rehab, about addiction, about my specific experiences inside of that. And they feel like jokes that only I can tell.
Right.
Which is more of a special feeling.
Well, a lot of comedians now are embracing that, like a John Mulaney, and, they're talking about it a lot more. And it's not that their comedy has changed. It's just, you're all storytellers, and you're just telling, that's just another story that you tell. But is there anything you any part of it, your story that you keep back that you're that's kind of off limits?
I'll say that I think writing jokes about your worst times is a delicate process. A quote that I've heard before that I like is write from your scars, not your wounds. Mm. And if you're still not over something or still really hurt by something, I think sometimes artists get in this mode of I have to take my worst pain and create it. I got to make it into something that the world can enjoy, which is sort of this difficult and sort of noble pursuit, taking something that was bad for you and turning it into something that everyone can laugh at. But the reality is that if you are doing that with something that you are not yourself over, you're just kind of reliving this horrible time that you had constantly. Before I went to rehab, I had a bad breakup and I was doing material about that on stage, and the material was doing okay, but sometimes it wouldn't really work. And I think audiences could tell this dude's in pain about
You're in
this
your feelings still.
Yeah. And I realized that this thing that I needed to get over, I was just reliving it constantly and talking about it all the time. And it was preventing me from moving past it. So ultimately I had to be what am I doing? I just let this write a joke about egg salad or something. Mm-hmm. I don't have to relive the worst day of my life all the time. Because I think it's cool to turn that into something that people can laugh at. Yeah, I just think it's important to be careful. It's good to write stuff about your experience. And I think people really appreciate shit that is honest and comes from a true place. But don't hurt yourself to do that.
I read a quote once. We only laugh at equals. We're either laughing at ourselves, which isn't funny, or we're laughing at somebody else, which, that imbalances it. But when we're together. So when you connect with an audience, that's the sweet spot of humor. You're totally connected, where before I was either I was the joke or somebody else was the joke. And that's really important. Some people make a living off of that too. Did you notice any difference in that, coming kind of closer to your audiences?
A lot of the stuff that I started to do about addiction and stuff resonated with crowds.
Yeah.
You can take it's fun doing comedy about like a mundane subject. Like there's guys out there that can write 20 minutes about a coffee table, and it's fun and people will laugh at it. But I think that the things that people laugh the hardest at are the things that they can connect with.
Mhm.
I've had the pleasure of like performing for like I did like an NA show once where everyone in the room was an addict. So they all know exactly what I'm talking about, and everything was resonating with everybody. And some of the punchlines that for a general crowd, sometimes, you know, maybe you only get a little laugh, we get like the biggest laugh in front of those guys, which is really, a great feeling.
In treatment, were you kind of able to explore some of those feelings that maybe you were picking up substances for or making people laugh for to like fill whatever feeling that you were trying to either not feel or was just too awkward to feel?
Yeah, I think what I picked up on is that a lot of my substance abuse came from a feeling of inadequacy.
Mhm.
I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I had much value. And, you know, making people laugh is a good way to feel like you have some worth. It's instant gratification,
Yep.
similar to drug use. Is, you know, you feel
It's
like
that dopamine
you feel like,
hit.
oh, I'm useless. And then
Yeah.
someone laughs at something you say and you're like, okay, well, maybe not completely useless. You know, they gotta laugh. But yeah, I didn't see a ton of value in myself. And I think part of the reason I stayed in addiction for so long is I got some value out of being the party guy. That was sort of my role in my community for a long time, was that if people wanted to go out and drink, I was there.
That's what made you feel
I
useful at the
never
time.
said
Wow,
no to going out for drinks, like ever. I was always down. And I sort of embraced that as almost like my function, is that, you know, if people are looking to have a good time, okay, I can do it. I'd have been out until 6 a.m. the day before and just still coming down, and someone would be like, hey, drinks tonight? I'd be like, yes, no problem. I can do it. Day in, day out for years.
Do you ever have other comedians now come up to you, let's say in the green room, and hey, can I just talk to you for a second? And like, do they approach you and see what you're like, what you're doing and what you've done with your comedy and recovery, and you know, are curious about that and want to know
Sure.
how'd you do it?
People ask questions for sure. A lot, because I mean, it's any arts community often is rampant with substance abuse.
Yeah.
So I've had some people approach me for sure. I would say today that there's a lot more sober comedians in my community than when I was drinking, which I wouldn't attribute just to myself. I think there's been a bit of a cultural shift in the last few years, I think, in general, which is good. I think more information has come out about how harmful alcohol is. And, you know, you can just tell that the shift is happening because now there's like 1 million non-alcoholic beers that you can
Right.
buy, and some of them are pretty good. Whereas like, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, there was like 2 and they were shit.
Duels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like Beck's is one that I find they've really managed to replicate a proper skunky fucking beer. Which for me is, I always drank shit beer. So for me, the transition to non-alcoholic was like really actually quite
This is
simple.
a step up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much more options now. There's, I mean, bars have like a full-on NA menu now, which is great.
And I know some people have to be super careful with stuff like that.
Yep.
Like some people, it's too triggering. I'm grateful that I've been managed. I can have, you know, non-alc beers and it doesn't do much to me or trigger me in any way. Because I just drank so many fucking beers for like years and years that I genuinely, I like the taste. But anyway, so there is a cultural shift happening where people are drinking less, and I'm noticing it in my community, which is great. I think partially the like harsh economy is helping, where people also just can't afford to as much anymore.
Right.
In a weird way, that's like keeping people off the sauce as much too. But definitely, yeah, I get approached by a lot of curious people, especially online as well. Not necessarily people from my like comedy community in person, but I do a lot of recovery content on my Instagram and stuff like that. So I would say I get, you know, maybe 5 to 10 messages a week from people who are you know, sober, curious, maybe really struggling, looking to get some help and stuff like that.
That's a good sign when people start to ask, you know, you for advice. But going back to your experience, you know, a lot of people don't have people that care enough to do interventions, or a family that says, we'll chip in. And as you said, there's so many different types of treatment.
Mhm.
So those barriers are, just lack of knowledge keeps people away.
For sure.
Keeps those doors closed. So how do you help those kind of people?
I think what I like to do, my little way of giving back, is I just fucking wear it, that I'm an addict all the time.
Yeah.
Even in videos that I make online where it's not necessary for me to mention it.
You were cooking.
Yeah, like I'll make a cooking video. I just call it Cooking with an Addict. The fact that I'm an addict isn't really relevant to the video, but I just like to put it out there all the time, because people feel a lot of shame, and that is, honestly, there are a lot of different ways to get help, and if you start looking for them and asking for them, you'll probably find one that works for you in some way, or at least is a good starting point.
I noticed it when you were talking about, like, alcohol is bad. Like, everybody knows that, but it's not until you dug deeper. Why is it? It's a poison we are putting in our bodies that's going to like alter your mind. It's the education of like learning more about it and really digging deep into those things that like creates that moment of like clarity.
For sure. I think the more you learn, like, especially about alcohol, if I'm remembering correctly, like, a lot of people don't know it like increases your body's production of cortisol, which is the chemical that causes stress. So if you're drinking all the time, you'll be like baseline more stressed out.
I'm stressed out, need a drink.
Yeah. I'm stressed out. I need a drink that's going to make my stress worse. You are like a walking
science guy, man. You're like, I didn't understand science. I think you do.
I'm able to parrot it.
I went to like theater school. You're all right.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of this information is like, it's not so hard to come by. It's just, for me, like removing the stigma and the shame, so that people don't feel like they, a lot of people don't ask for help because they don't want anyone to know that there's a problem, because they're ashamed of the problem, which I don't feel like people should have to be. It's a very common issue. You're just like sick, get some help. It should be totally normal and regular to do. And a lot of people, like, I wish, I lost years of my life because I didn't want to admit how bad things were or whatever. And there, those could have been good years. And then I'm relatively one of the lucky ones. There's people who lost decades more than me.
But could you ever imagine what you're living right now in your wild, like in all that time that, you say you lost, but like what you have now, was that even?
It is true. Like, I think I'm glad that I went through everything that I did, because I am happy where I am today. And I think I'm doing some cool shit. And, I don't mind what I'm up to. But, sometimes you do wish that you knew sooner and stuff, just to avoid, there's collateral damage. There's people that I hurt, that maybe if I knew sooner what I was dealing with, I could have got clean sooner and avoided that negative effect on other people's lives. And sometimes it's hard not to carry that around with you.
Sure. I'll be honest. When I'm in a meeting and somebody says, I'm celebrating, 25 years of sobriety, I'm like, how did you figure that out? Like, congrats, but that wasn't me. That's for sure. Those are amazing people too. I mean, but I feel pretty good, the years I have. So, how long? I'm sorry. Tell me how long.
I'm coming up on like 27 months. So I'm a little over 2 years.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. The way I look at it, I got sober around 30. I'm like, okay, you know what? I lost a decade. That's all right.
But like when you were talking before, the first time you went into treatment, how old were you?
Was I 30 yet? I think I had turned 30. Yeah, I turned 30. I turned 30 in Scotland. I was, before I was sober, I went and did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
I've heard of that.
It's a crazy party. I think I did like 60 something shows in 28 days, because there's shows that happen all day from like noon until like 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a really wild time. It's a dangerous place for an addict. It's also pretty easy to find drugs there. I did coke and Molly, I think every day for like a month. That place almost broke my whole brain. I thought I was going to have a heart attack several different times when I was in Scotland.
It's so funny because when I turned 40, my wife, ex-wife, said, anywhere in the world, where do you want to go? I'm like, Oktoberfest.
Hell
She's
yeah.
like, what? I'm like, duh. Like, are you kidding? Like, and my excuse was, well, I'm from Wisconsin, so it's the bratwurst.
That's like our
Right.
like our
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it was
Going for the sausage.
great. I heard they're awesome. The mustard is out of this world.
Yeah.
But I bring that up because when you were talking about it, you said this is like, I feel like this is kind of the end. Like this doesn't, like, you felt like everything had gotten so bad that what's the point? Like this is just too hard to come over. And now here you are.
It's funny how hopeless things do feel. And, that's the disease, and that's all of that mind altering accumulating, I guess. It's often said about the disease that it like isolates you and then it kills you.
Yep.
Right. And that's what it was pretty close to doing for me. I mean, all of my friends were so fed up that like, if I didn't come through on this one last thing, they were willing to just like, we can't watch this anymore.
Yeah.
And we can like no longer sort of back you up. So that was nearly me isolated. We were close, and I was having heart pain. Like I would get winded walking up a flight of stairs. I thought I was overdosing like several different times. One time I called an ambulance for myself when I was in the process of trying to walk to the hospital, and I was going to take transit.
You love walking.
Yeah. I'm a big walking guy. But I was trying to take transit at first, and like the bus route was fucked up for some reason. So I was walking, and I don't know if you've ever been at a point before, like my heart was just going nuts. But logically I was like, I think if you were going to have a heart attack, you would have had it already. So I'm kind of trying to like calm myself down. But then another voice is like, well, what if you're wrong? Like, what if you are about to have a heart attack? What if you just fucking die walking down the street at like 10 o'clock in the morning? And so eventually I was like, fuck it, I can't like gamble that. So I called an ambulance, and they, showed up, and I felt really guilty because I was like, what if someone with like a problem that they couldn't have prevented needs this ambulance?
Oh, wow. You went deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of just blaming it on the poutine,
Yeah.
like not only did you like seek help, which is amazing, but then you went like, you felt guilty about it.
Yeah, I felt guilty for like wasting the resource. But so that time I thought I might be having a heart attack or something, or I could. And I called for help. There was a couple times when I was just like alone in my bedroom doing cocaine where I thought I might be overdosing. And
wow,
I would just kind of stop doing the drugs and sit there with myself for a little bit and like analyze, like, okay, am I overdosing? Is this what it is? I don't know what it actually feels like.
Waiting
really,
for the feelings to
like,
pass.
could this? Yeah.
So
hopefully, I'm being insane.
Yeah.
Because the drugs also make you paranoid.
Right.
So I'm probably just being paranoid. But there was a couple days that I just went to bed. I was probably like 90% sure I was going to wake up, but there was like 10% of me that was like, you might die in your sleep. But I didn't care.
Was asking for help something that came naturally to you, or
no,
they
learned they shove the help directly in my face.
Yeah, but I mean, you call the ambulance, like I used to bits and pieces of it, but asking for help was one of the things that.
Hard.
One of the hardest
Especially
things.
when you feel like you don't deserve it.
But yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That was, yeah, I guess I'm so lucky. I don't think I ever really did fucking ask for help. They just duct taped me and threw me in the help house,
We're grateful for that duct tape.
Yeah. And I ended up like coming around to it once I was already trapped in there. Mm-hmm. But, without that, I don't know. I'd probably be dead.
Wow. So go back to your friends that like, saw like, dude, you gotta do this. Okay. Now you've done it.
Yeah.
Do these same friends, are they amazed? Like, do they see a difference?
Yeah. Everyone's very proud.
Wow.
Love that.
Everyone's very proud. Yeah. They're great. We all got together like a couple of days after I got out of rehab and sort of had a postmortem. I was still sort of mad at them at that time.
Those letters were mean.
Though one of them was really mean. But for a while, I was a bit bitter about they sort of like took from me the autonomy of the situation. Like, because I wanted to save my family that money, and I was like, I don't want to go to rehab. I want to go stay with my parents for like a month or two, and I'll go to meetings and I'll do some therapy, but it'll be way less money. And they fucking stonewalled me on it. They were like, we all agreed it has to be rehab. None of us is allowed to waffle. And there was a bit of resentment at first, just because I was like, what if I could have done it the other way, and save my family that money? And since then, it's so funny. At the time, $15,000 was like, I was like, I've ruined my life.
Mhm.
And now, 2 years later, I'm like, oh, it's paid off, and it was not
That's
a huge
awesome.
deal.
And now when people write letters about you, they're nice and
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about friends. who write
Exactly.
happy notes.
And you know what? Ultimately, like, I feel bad for resenting them. At the time, it's just, it's fresh. You're wounded.
absolutely.
Well, you have it's everyone else. Not me. It's everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I was just annoyed that, I was like, I can be very stubborn. We all have our little things, and I can be like, I could have done it my way. But the reality that I have to face is that, maybe I could have.
Mhm.
Maybe I could have done it the way that I wanted to do it. But they stepped in and fucking did something.
Yep.
And I wasn't doing anything. I was drowning.
Yeah.
I wasn't about to make that change without what they did. So even if they didn't do it perfectly, first of all, it's a really hard and stressful thing to have to fucking do while you're in the middle of living your own goddamn life with, that was one thing that stressed me out when I had the intervention. There were so many of them there. I was like, oh God, just the amount of group messaging and like coordinating.
How'd y'all get here at
that
the
it would
same
take
time?
for all of these busy people to be here on the same day. And you sort of realize that everyone's been talking about you. And it's like,
But it's because people care.
it is. It's because they care. And like I said, ultimately, whether I could have done it my way or not, we'll never fucking know. It doesn't matter. They stepped in, they fucking did something. I wasn't gonna. I was gonna die.
Yeah. So for somebody that was in your shoes at that point that wasn't gonna, what advice do you have for them?
I think let people in. I think problems become more manageable when they're out in the open and you have some help. A common quote is that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's community. So I think that's really important. I try to be careful with giving advice because I am like new in sobriety, and I don't think that I'm like the greatest expert out there or anything, but sometimes I get messages from people where they're like, yeah, I really don't want to tell my mom or this person or that person. And my advice is usually like, I don't know what people's home situations are, but I'm like, if you feel like it's a safe thing to do to tell them, like you're not going to be putting yourself in some kind of danger, then let people in. Let them, the people that care about you, know that you're struggling. And I think anybody that I've told that to that's gotten back to me has been like, oh yeah, I told my mom and she was so happy that I told her. And, we're working on it together now. Letting people in, educating yourself, remembering that it's a problem that a lot of people have and that you don't need to be ashamed.
Give yourself some grace.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace.
Absolutely.
Your addiction is like, the disease is not your fault. Your recovery is your responsibility though. But once you let some people in and eliminate the shame and accept that you need some help and you're going to start looking for that help because you don't feel ashamed, you'll find the path that works for you. Because there are a lot of different, some people are program people. Some people really like stuff like cognitive behavioral therapy. Some people become like kind of fitness obsessed. I'm like I'm leaning that direction. I'm in the gym a lot. You'll figure out your own path. I'm someone who I never specifically did the 12 steps, but I've been to a lot of meetings and, heard the readings and stuff. And I'm grateful for that. And I think it's a great program because I've sort of taken a lot of concepts from it and applied them to my life for sure.
Well, at the very least, you what you get there is connection.
Yeah.
You don't feel isolated alone. You don't have to, the steps that those are all like bonus things, but like at the very base,
Yeah.
I never had that kind of connection.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
think meetings are a great place to start and try out for sure. If especially in the early days, being around a lot of similar-minded people who are all going through the same kind of thing is really valuable. There'll be people there that have been sober for longer than you. They can give you some kind of helpful pointers. Maybe you end up getting a sponsor. That's a path for a lot of people that works out really well. And they're free. Meetings are goddamn free. So if rehab's not on the table for you,
Yeah.
you can go for free. And there's even ones online, like 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
If you just Google like 24-hour AA meeting, there's like a
You
couple
can-
websites,
You
I
can
think.
go anywhere in the, that, I got sober just before COVID hit, and that got me through COVID. I could connect anywhere. If I needed connection, I knew where to go.
Yeah. And I think that
It's-
is really an amazing feature for a lot of people because, I mean, there are in-person meetings that aren't terribly difficult to find, but sometimes you probably only have access to maybe 2 or 3 of them a week that you can make it to feasibly in your schedule. Whereas, a craving can happen anytime.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do need something like quick to kind of help get you through that craving. That's when a lot of people call their sponsor. But if you don't have a sponsor, it is good to know that you can just lock into a meeting, go online, Google 24-hour AA meeting, click the link. It'll have one going and you can
Yep.
hop in there and listen to somebody talk. And a lot of times that'll help you, through that little craving.
Well, you know
spell.
what else happens at meetings too? Every once in a while, you get somebody that comes back,
Mhm.
and that went out, I relapsed, did whatever, and they come back, and they're welcomed with, like, the shame that they probably had 2 steps before they walked through that door. Like, I'm going to do it, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Because everyone, you're just like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Seeing that and telling, because everyone's human, it happens.
For sure. It's for a lot of people, it's
To
not
come-
it's not linear.
It's
You know?
yeah.
It's for some people, it's ups and downs for years. I saw it when I was in rehab. There was guys that were going in for their 5th time. But God bless them. They're still trying.
Yeah.
Meetings are so welcoming like that. I really like that, a lot of them, they'll say, who's got 24 hours? People put up their hands, you clap, it's, you sort of, I find environments like that are extra supportive
Mhm.
to the people that are, the earliest in their journey.
Yeah. I mean, where do you get affirmation like that?
Yeah.
And where can people find you?
Just follow me on Instagram. I do tons of recovery content on there. And that's where I'm sort of the most active, where I've had the most reception. It's at Andrew Barr Comedy on Instagram. I also am on TikTok as well, same handle, and starting to post on YouTube more as well. But so really any of those 3 socials I'm on. But Instagram, I would say, is the one that is the most active, especially if you want to reach out and get in touch. That's the one where I most closely monitor my inbox.
Well, Andrew, I got to tell you, I was excited to talk to a comedian for obvious reasons, but there was so much conversation behind the obvious. It's like I'd like to say, we tell our stories because we cannot heal in isolation. And thanks for telling us your story.
Well, thanks very much for having me. Thanks for creating this platform for people to do that.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.